Okay, so last video I told you how to boost your testosterone levels, and I said dress up as King Leonidas. And just to set an example, this is exactly what I did, although I just went as, your average Spartan warrior. And if you want to boost your testosterone levels, you got a whole year now to get yourself in shape and dress up as a Spartan next Halloween, okay? So last video I also mentioned how BPA in plastics causes aromatase to become more active, and it increases estrogen levels and decreases testosterone levels. And somebody asked me, well, how do I remove plastics from my life? Okay, first of all, do not drink from plastic bottles. Okay, I drink all my water and even my coffee from a metal flask. And also do not drink from soda cans, because the inside of soda cans actually has a thin plastic layer to stop the soda drink from corroding the aluminum, okay? Aluminum for all you Americans. In fact, you shouldn't be drinking sodas at all, because it's just really bad for your health, all right? Full of sugar or, the fake sugars. And then if you're cooking, I no longer use a plastic spatula. I use a metal spatula, all right? Which means that I can also no longer use a non-stick frying pan. I use a stainless steel frying pan. Okay, and if you use a stainless steel frying pan, the food will stick to the pan, so you have to wash it immediately after cooking, otherwise the pan is kind of ruined, all right? So it is less convenient, but it guarantees you don't get the plastic in your food, because the plastic spatulas under heat, the microplastics will come off the spatula, all right? And then also, there's now microplastics in drinking water in a lot of water supplies, because just the amount of plastics floating in the water. So you want to get a reverse osmosis water filter, or at least get a Brita filter, which is what I use. And then basically, when possible, just don't get in contact with plastics, right, in your life. And as I mentioned, it's very bad for male testosterone, and also upping estrogen levels in women, which makes it more likely for them to get certain cancers, all right? So today I'm going to talk about the other hormones, which are very important relating to body fat loss. And probably the most important hormone is insulin. Now, all the gym bros know that with higher testosterone levels, a male can, or even females can, build more muscle. But for some reason, when it comes to putting on body fat, all the gym bros always just talk about calorie in, calorie out. But there are certain hormones which make it much easier for somebody to put on body fat and much harder to lose body fat. And insulin is that hormone, okay? So insulin is the hormone which is secreted by the body to get the sugar out of the blood and into muscle and fat cells, okay? Especially fat cells. And when you eat carbohydrates, your blood sugar level will immediately go up, and then the body will produce insulin to bring it back down. Protein will produce a small insulin response, but much lower than carbohydrates, and fats almost produce none. So if you want your insulin level to be as low as possible, then you want to basically not eat carbohydrates, okay? This is for fat loss. And repeated insulin spikes are really bad. And a lot of people, especially if they are overweight, basically have insulin resistance when their body no longer responds to insulin properly, because they get repeated insulin spikes over the years. And that happens by eating very high carbohydrate meals and snacking all day on foods which have carbs. So they constantly get insulin spikes throughout the day. So the first thing you want to do is basically not eat breakfast with carbohydrates in it, all right? To avoid getting a sugar spike first thing in the morning, which would then get you an insulin spike. And then when that brings the blood sugar levels down, it will go below baseline, and you'll feel hungry again 2 or 3 hours later and want to snack on something even before lunch. So the best way to do it is just to eat a high protein breakfast and a high fat breakfast, so like eggs and meat, or if possible, avoid pancakes, cereal, stuff like that. That stuff is just really unhealthy. And if you want a variety, go for something like Greek yogurt and blueberries, right? Or just skip breakfast altogether, and that would be called intermittent fasting, right? So you finish dinner, you don't eat breakfast, and you wait until lunchtime to have your meal, all right? And that will put you in a longer fasting mode to get ketosis, which is burning your own body fat, right? And insulin is not only responsible for taking blood sugar out of the blood into the fat cells. It also blocks off the ability for the body to actually burn its own body fat. So when somebody becomes insulin resistant, when they consume carbohydrates, the body will produce insulin, but it no longer works on the cells, and then they keep on producing more and more insulin. And you can test for this by doing a fasted insulin test in your blood work. Or if you have really high blood sugar levels, then your HbA1c, which is a 3-month average of the amount of sugar stuck to your red blood cells, will be elevated. And above a certain level, you'll be classified as a pre-diabetic. And above a certain level, then you will literally be classified as a diabetic. And you really want to do those 2 blood tests to see how healthy you are in terms of whether you're insulin resistant or not. And the problem with having elevated insulin levels all the time is that insulin blocks off the ability of the enzyme hormone sensitive lipase to basically convert triglycerides in the fat cells into fatty acids. Okay, so the fat is stuck in the fat cells, and it also explains why overweight people are often hungry again soon after eating, but have low energy levels despite having so much fat stored in their body, because the insulin blocks off the ability for the body to actually tap into their own body fat. So they have to rely on the energy from their food, and then they'll get hungry again after a while after eating that food, and they can't burn their own body fat. So it's only after somebody reverses their insulin resistance that they become efficient at burning their body fat. And that is true for anyone that's overweight. Okay, it won't apply to people who are already metabolically healthy and doing a lot of exercise, but it will affect basically half the people in America are classified as insulin resistant. Anyone who's obese will very likely be insulin resistant already and trending towards becoming a diabetic. And the next hormone, and regarding insulin resistance, it is not only about body fat, it is really unhealthy and triggers a lot of other health issues. For example, if you Google type 3 diabetes, it is basically Alzheimer's disease. A lot of researchers classify Alzheimer's disease as type 3 diabetes. And basically the high amounts of insulin and sugar is basically inflaming the brain and causing problems with the brain. And something like polycystic ovarian syndrome for women, that is basically a PCOS. That is basically cysts growing on the ovaries, and it will affect a woman's ability to get pregnant. That is caused by insulin resistance as well. So it's very important to make sure a person is still sensitive to insulin if they want to remain healthy, all right? And the next hormone I want to talk about is glycogen. Cortisol, right? Glycogen is the carbohydrate which is stored in our muscles and our liver. And cortisol is the stress hormone. And I've mentioned this before in previous videos. Cortisol causes the body to go into a catabolic state, so it will burn muscle for fuel, but it will also trigger visceral fat deposit. So you want your stress to be as low as possible. You want to sleep as much as possible and go to bed early. And also you can lower your cortisol levels by doing meditation or consciously doing deep breaths, but slow exhales. So like, or do, 2 sharp inhales and a very slow exhale. And the slow exhale, which is longer than the inhale, will cause you to trigger your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and relaxation part of your nervous system. And if you do 10 of these breaths during the day, if you feel anxious or you feel stressed, then it will help you lower your stress levels and your cortisol levels. And cortisol is, again, a really unhealthy hormone to be elevated all the time. It does have its function, like you will have elevated cortisol in the morning to give you an energy boost. But if you have elevated cortisol all the time, it will literally age you and cause you health issues, all right? And the next hormone I want to talk about is thyroid hormones, all right? So thyroid hormone, in people who have too much is called hyperthyroidism, and with people who have too little is called hypothyroidism. And if you have too much, then you will struggle to put on body weight because it elevates your basal metabolic rate a lot. And if you have too little, then a person will have much lower basal metabolic rate, which is the resting metabolic rate, the amount of energy being burnt when a person is resting, not including walking around and exercising. So they will struggle, they will put on weight much easier. And if you look at this study, having more thyroid hormone won't just increase basal metabolic rate, it will actually cause the person to have fewer insulin receptors. So they will struggle hard to put on body fat, while somebody with too little thyroid hormones, with hypothyroidism, will have 70% more insulin receptors, and they will basically put on fat much quicker, okay? In the study, it said like 5 times higher than average. So to get your thyroid hormones into a healthy range, you want to get as much vitamin D as possible, and the best source is to just get plenty of sunlight. So you want to expose your skin and get at least 20 minutes of direct sunlight a day. If you're working in an office, maybe go out for lunch and roll up your sleeves and stuff like that. And on weekends, try to get as much sun as possible. I get sun all the time because I am the topless chef, and I walk around town topless. I cycle around town topless, and I scare all my neighbors. Okay, you don't have to do that, but you know, go into the park or go to the swimming pool where you have an excuse to take your top off, right? And also you want to make sure you have a healthy amount of iodine, which you can get from eggs. And if you don't enjoy eating eggs, you can get it from something like seaweed. And the last hormones I want to talk about is basically the satiety hormones, leptin and GLP-1. Okay, so leptin is the hormone associated with feeling full, and somebody who has insulin resistance, as I mentioned earlier, will also end up getting leptin resistance. So the receptor cells on receptors on the cells will no longer be responsive to leptin, so a person will feel hungry all the time. In fact, they've done studies on mice with issues with their leptin, and the mice would just keep on overeating, all right? So again, you want to reverse the insulin resistance to then be responsive to your own leptin. And GLP-1 is the hormone that a lot of these new weight loss drugs, such as Ozempic, work on. Okay, they're GLP-1 agonists, and they trigger the person to feel full, so they no longer want to eat. But the problem with a lot of these weight loss drugs is that they have a lot of side effects. So they affect the thyroid, they affect the kidneys, not for everyone, but for certain people, and they cause way too much muscle loss as the person's losing weight. So for really overweight people, if they want to rely on these drugs to lose weight the first time around, I guess if it helps them to get out of an unhealthy state, then go for it. But I would really advise on relying on these drugs, because you cannot take them long term, and they cause way too much muscle loss. So then after a while, the person's metabolic rate will drop because they've lost all their lean muscle mass. And then if they go back to their unhealthy way of eating again, they're going to put fat back on, but with even less muscle. So basically, that person really still has to learn how to eat healthy to maintain, to stay slim. And the best way to trigger more GLP-1 release is to eat a lot of protein and healthy fats, all right? So animal fats are perfectly fine, and eggs are a very good source of healthy fats. And if you do not eat the carnivore diet like I do, which is just like all meat and eggs, then you can get healthy fats from avocados and olives, okay? Things like vegetable oils that are touted as being healthy are the most unhealthy things, all right? They cause inflammation and oxidation of the cells, and they're very high in omega-6, okay? Like the ratio of the omega-6 to 3 is like crazy, and it's very unhealthy. So you want to avoid things like vegetable oils for cooking, and you want to cook with stuff like beef tallow or butter or ghee for animal-based, or for plant-based, use avocado oil. Okay, don't use olive oil for cooking because it has a low smoke point. Okay, so those are my tips on how to get your hormones into a healthy range so you can lose body fat at a much more efficient rate. It is not just about counting calories, because people who count calories and are long-term able to maintain their weight tend to be gym bros and bodybuilders, because they're highly motivated by how they look. So they can go long periods feeling hungry while they're cutting weight. But I can tell you, like, you can ask any bodybuilder who's losing weight for a competition, they will be absolutely miserable and completely depleted when they're competing, when they're trying to lose weight, because they're feeling hungry all the time. And that's why it's not sustainable for most people. Okay, most people want to lose weight, but they don't want to feel hungry all the time, all right? And that's why calorie counting has not worked over long period. Like, basically, people have been talking about calorie counting for decades, and the reason why it doesn't work for most people is because most people can't stand the mental agony of being hungry all the time, all right? Which is why, like, in this weight loss competition I'm doing with my friends, I've eaten 0 calorie deficit. I'm just been eating meat and eggs, and I've still lost weight. And I'm feeling full all the time, which is the important issue for most people, right? So even if you're not eating just a fully meat-based diet, you want to have plenty of meat plus the fat on the meat to trigger more satiety hormone release, right? And if you're eating plant-based stuff, eat a lot of fatty plant materials such as avocados, all right? Okay, so next update, I'll be talking about the corruption in the regulatory bodies such as the US Department of Agriculture and the Food and Drug Administration, all right? It'll be an interesting video. So remember to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll do a video update next week, just before the US elections, because the corruption in the US regulatory bodies is so bad, it has actually affected the US election. So if you're curious to find out about that topic and why it's going to affect the US elections, then stay tuned for the next video.